So, Guilty Gear and freaks, they go hand in hand, you know? You don't need me to say that, but freaky characters in Guilty Gear have always been a staple of the franchise, you know? Especially as time went on, Daisuke's vision truly started to bless this game more, as new games kept, releasing. Let's not forget characters like, say, an homunculus with a giant key, a bed with a sleepy man on it, a crazy robot lizard woman, and this thing. So, the series is blooming with weird oddballs since the beginning, and one of the most notable oddballs we've had for things such as his pure class and dandyism, his crazy power level, and mind-numbing gameplay as well. Slayer. Welcome to Design Retrospective, and today we are covering him. Pile the bunker the like button and pile the bunker the subscribe button. Yeah, what am I saying? To begin, we gotta go back to the year 2002. Great year. Wasn't even alive back then. Anyways, Guilty Gear XX, a continuation of the game Guilty Gear X, had just released, and with it came a lot of fan-favorite characters. Zappa, Eno, Bridget, and of course, the star of today's video, Slayer. He's a vampire that has been alive for long, even way longer than the events that started off the main storyline of Guilty Gear, so that's how you know he's super old. He's notable for things such as giving Soul Bad Guy the name, Soul Bad Guy, and for founding the Assassin's Guild, which is an important faction in the franchise who included a lot of notable characters in it. Although over time he became less devoted to it due to the original intent of it shifting and him discovering his future wife, Sharon, an immortal woman, would end up falling for him, ending up being a good resource for blood. When he eventually retires from his guild, he passes on this power to Zato 1, so Slayer can live a more comfortable life for himself, to live his true epic Sigma lifestyle. However, after Zato 1 just, dies eventually, and his organization goes to hell, Slayer comes out of retirement just to deal with this hot mess. There's a lot of other connections Slayer would end up having during the franchise, like his connection and knowledge of Gabriel in a significant way, even trying to help him defeat Batman in X-Sword's story, or even helping members of the guild like Millie and Venom. In between all that, coming in and out of retirement more times than he maybe should have. I guess that's how it's gonna be sometimes. Talking about the design part of Slayer now, you can definitely feel that in his design he has a lot of vampiric traits and fashion sense, which again makes sense. He's a big vampire man, so hey, not really out of character. Talking more about behaviors and traits, he can perform things such as a lot of teleporting, or I guess moving fast depending on how you see it, which is common in vampires. His super strength may also have been inspired by how vampires are usually seen as super powerful monsters due to their advantages compared to humans. Slayer acknowledges his strength and tends to usually scale it down and be laid back so he doesn't have the advantage. That's also seen in Slayer in how he quote-unquote loses. He's not even injured and is usually just lays down with a taunting face. I'm glad the vampiric Guilty Gear tradition is still alive and going, Other vampire-inspired things he has are, for example, his age, with him looking like a middle-aged man normally, even though he's centuries old. His need for blood, as mentioned prior, and the consistent motif of bats, which are seen in elements like escape, shape-shifting into one at times, and even a swarm of bats appearing when he spawns in, as implied in the new Strife trailer. But hey, I'll be touching on that Strife thing more later on, so yeah. Fashion-wise, Slayer sticks to being traditional and classy, as he's filled with pure dandyism, including things such as a fancy dark suit with some belt buckles and a white undershirt, some dark pants and brown classy shoes, a monocule, and a well-kept mustache and beard combo, as well as slick brown hair that chooses to be in whatever shape that day, The most contrasting elements in his design include the only deviating color from his palette being a red shoulder cape and red crosses over his torso. The crosses are both included as a tie and arm embroidery, and I think it's obvious. It's quite an ironic design decision for a vampire, As well as that, his red shoulder cape not only helps stand out against his quote-unquote relatively muted palette, but as mentioned prior, helps to give Slayer more interesting visuals, like it being able to turn into a bat, as well as it being a good way for Slayer to teleport. For the longest time, this design is all we got for Slayer, being relatively iconic, if not a bit off-putting now, with the only other design outside of that being from a pachinko game of all things. While afar he seems relatively traditional, I mean, he still has a lot of elements from prior games. The biggest elements that don't correspond are the fact that his top is buttoned up, wearing a normal tie and having a black cape over both of his shoulders with a red interior, which I mean is an interesting design change for a small game no one remembers, but still frankly a cool and fascinating design choice. But later on in the next game, aka Xrd, Slayer would go back to being more traditional as always, which I can understand. Xrd was a game trying to get used to the whole new 3D engine, so besides some exceptions, most characters stayed relatively traditional to their 2D counterparts, included being, of course, Slayer. And for the longest time, that's all we got for Slayer, since the next big game, Guilty Gear Strive, didn't include them in the base roster. And wasn't in this game for almost 3 years. God, it's been a while. But recently, in EVO Japan, Slayer would be announced for a whole month later. So yeah, he isn't in a game yet, but from the trailers we got, as well as the recent character guide, we have definitely a lot to dissect, per se. First things first, Slayer is now wearing a more relatively normal suit, in trend of Strive characters having a more grounded fashion sense compared to previous games, wearing a button-up vest with a regular tie and silver cross-shaped buttons, instead of having a giant cross tie. Additionally, his arm crosses went away, being instead on his next big design change, a giant dark coat over his shoulders, which serves to replace his red shoulder cape. And even if it doesn't include a lot of the patterns besides the cross patterns, it serves a lot of the prior functionalities as his old cape. While that could have been the end of it with Slayer, and we would have had everything we wanted, they decided to give us more over-the-top details that correlate with him being a powerful vampire man. That's in mostly in his overdrives, where his pure strength just rips him out of his own clothing for brief moments, as well as him briefly de-aging, which can tie back to the fact that, again, vampires don't really age conventionally, so maybe de-aging briefly to give a big giant punch can be a part of that, I guess. Overall though, I'm just happy he's going to be in Strive soon. I've been playing his ass since Accent 4+R, so to finally be able to pile bunker and Strive is a dream come to life. And with his new design frankly just making the classical one look so weird and primitive in comparison, I say that the design team did a good job while designing him, and that I just can't wait to play Slayer at his peak of his design. Now don't mind me just going to train as Slayer for a bit more now. Thanks for watching. This video was such a stress to make, but hey, it's finally done. Again, if you want to support, you can always like and subscribe, commenting also helps, and follow my socials. So yeah, again, thanks for watching, see you in the next video.